Japanese automobile manufacturer Suzuki just made an announcement that most people in the business world are treating as an automotive story. It is not an automotive story, it is a leadership story. And if you are a foreign executive running a business in Japan, it is directly about you. Here is what happened, and here is what it means. Suzuki announced they are targeting Africa as their next major growth market. They are calling it the next India. Their target, 150,000 vehicles a year by 2030, up from 127,000 today, in a continent with a population of 1.5 billion people, projected to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. On the surface, that sounds like a modest automotive expansion story. 20% volume growth, new export lanes, emerging market bet. But here is the context that changes everything. Suzuki entered India in 1983. At the time, the consensus among Japanese corporations was that India was too poor, too complex, and too far from the premium end of the market that serious companies were supposed to chase. The case for saying no was overwhelming. Suzuki said yes anyway. 40 years later, India is their most important market. It is their production hub. It is where 60% of their planned capital investment is going. The executives who said yes to India in 1983 were right, not because they got lucky, but because they were reading long cycle signals that the consensus was not equipped to see. And now they are doing it again, in Africa. So the question I want to ask you, the foreign executive watching this video, is this. What is the gap between how Suzuki thinks about time horizons and market commitment and how you are running your business in Japan right now? Because I would argue that gap is large, and that it matters enormously for your career and your organization. Here is the core problem. Most foreign executives running businesses in Japan are operating inside an 18-month performance window. Headquarters demands results. The Japan profit and loss statement is real. The board review is quarterly. That is not a criticism. It is the structural reality of how most multinationals manage overseas operations. But here is what that structure does to your thinking. It optimizes you for the current market at the expense of the next one. It rewards you for defending existing market share and penalizes you for making bets that will not pay off within the reporting cycle. It makes you, systematically, structurally, a reactive player in a market where your best Japanese competitors are building 10 and 20-year positions. Suzuki is not waiting for Africa to validate itself. They are building distribution infrastructure, brand recognition, and manufacturing capacity right now, while the market is still inconvenient and the returns are still distant. By the time Africa is obviously the right bet, Suzuki will own it. Ask yourself honestly, what is your organization building right now that will pay off in 10 years? Now here is the detail in Suzuki's Africa strategy that most observers have missed. They are not building Africa from scratch. They are routing it through India, an engine they built over 4 decades. Africa is not a new bet. It is leverage off an existing position. India receives 60% of Suzuki's planned capital investment and serves as the production hub for exports to the Middle East and Africa, the investment compounds. For most foreign executives in Japan, operational infrastructure, supply chain, distribution, supplier relationships is a cost management problem. You optimize it for efficiency and measure it by how much it saves per unit. Suzuki treats their supply chain as a competitive weapon. The infrastructure they built for India is now the infrastructure they are using to enter Africa faster, cheaper, and more reliably than any competitor building from zero. So, here is the question for you. What infrastructure are you building in your Japan operations that could give you that kind of leverage? What capability, distribution network, supplier relationship, or organizational knowledge are you developing today that could power an adjacent market move in 5 years? If you cannot answer that question, you are managing a cost center, not building a strategic asset. What I call the Galapagos trap is the tendency of Japanese companies to become so optimized for the domestic market that they lose the ability to compete globally. But the Galapagos trap has a mirror image, and I see it constantly in foreign executives running businesses in Japan. You came to Japan. You learned Japan. You built your career on your ability to navigate Japan, the language, the culture, the relationships, the regulatory environment. Japan is your expertise, your identity, your competitive advantage, and that is exactly what traps you. The foreign executives who build the most durable careers in Japan are not the ones who become the most expert at Japan as it currently exists. They are the ones who use Japan as a platform, a base from which to think, build, and position for what comes next. They see Japan operations not as the destination, but as the capability set that prepares them for a larger game. Suzuki did not become great by becoming great at Japan. They became great by using Japan as the foundation for India, and now by using India as the foundation for Africa. Each market built the capability that made the next market possible. What is Japan building in your business? The executives who approved Suzuki's India entry in 1983 made a decision that looked wrong by every conventional metric at the time. They were right, not because they got lucky, but because they were reading signals the consensus was not equipped to see. The signals around the next major shift in your industry are already visible right now. Consumer behavior is changing. Demographics are reshaping the workforce. AI is restructuring the cost and capability basis of every industry. The foreign executive environment in Japan is evolving under political pressure. New markets are opening. Most organizations will wait for those signals to become undeniable before they act. By then, the first movers will have already built the positions that are nearly impossible to displace. Suzuki noticed Africa before Africa was obvious. That is not a corporate story. That is a leadership story. So here is what I want you to do. Don't use your Japan profit and loss statement as the boundary of your strategic thinking. It is not. It is the foundation. Look at the capabilities your Japan operation has built: distribution relationships, organizational knowledge, customer insight, regulatory expertise, and ask which of those could be leveraged into an adjacent market or an adjacent opportunity that your headquarters has not yet validated. Then make the case for it. Not because the returns are certain, they are not, but because the executives who wait for certainty are always late, always competing on price, and always wondering why the incumbents are so difficult to dislodge. Suzuki will own Africa because they moved when it was inconvenient. Your Japan competitors are thinking the same way about the next opportunity in your industry. The question is whether you are too. You too can wield the uncertainty of others as your strategic weapon. If this video gave you something to think about, subscribe. I publish weekly on leadership, strategy, and business growth for executives operating in Japan. And if you want to go deeper on bold strategy and deliberate market disruption, my books, Strategy on Your Own Terms and Disrupt or Be Disrupted, are available on Amazon. Links in the description. I will see you in the next video.